Ifá ìbáṣe Olúmúlà, ìbáṣe Oludumare, mójúbà Egungun, mójúbà Olóró, mójúbà Orí, mójúbà Orí Ìlú, mójúbà Ìpànlé, mójúbà Òrìṣà. We call upon the spirit of the Ori, the Orishas, so divine spirits in heaven. We ask for you to descend, come and be a part of this class. We ask for you to come and be a part of the learning process, teach us, reach us. We ask for you to come and dwell within our hearts, minds, spirits, and body. To give us that which needs to go forward in the spirit of Ire. On this day we say Ashe, 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 Ashe. What we've been talking about as we began this whole thing, we're talking about Odu. And we're talking about the whole aspect of this consciousness of Oludumare, and we were talking about how things come into existence. So before we even get into Odus, remember we said we were going to talk about all 256 Odus. So before we get into Odu, we have to get you to understand what is Odu. We have to get you to understand what is Ori. We have to get you to understand what is all this movement, what is all this energy that rests in a place called Orun, which is heaven. What was going on in heaven first before everything started to make manifest into form that we now call, i.e. our experience, our purpose, our goals, our life, our spirit. I mean, what is it that we're here to do, and what was going on in this place called heaven that took place for us to get an Odu, a contract that when we come down onto earth to have something to do. So all this is tied together. So Brother Fadide is not here today. I don't know exactly what all classes are loaded up. Did anybody know what classes, all the classes loaded up in the archives on OIDSI from the past 5 months? I'm hearing somebody saying, yeah.
Most.
Last month is up because some people said they saw last month's class.
Yeah, there's quite a few classes up. I don't know if it's all 5 months though. Potentially.
Okay, but quite a few classes up. Okay, well, once they're up, you can follow along pretty much with what we're saying. But this is kind of sort of the aspect of the class, or the aspect of the lesson of all this interaction in heaven that now needs to take place on earth. So the concept of as above, so below now comes into its meaning. Okay, so the title for today's class is The Ministers of the Priest of Oludumare. And the ministers, the priest of Oludumare is actually taken from a book called Oludumare, the God of the Yoruba Belief. And for me to best explain it that way, and I know how Africans in America, we often learn better from books, more so than just an oral tradition. So this is one of the chapters in the book that kind of explains some of the things that we'll talk about here today. But to get you to understand the priests and ministers of Oludumare, what I'm here to talk about is Orisha, or divine forces. Okay, so what I want to do to set the stage, I'm going to get back into something that most of us started with early on in life. And this may be sounding a little bit tedious, but I kind of have to do this to get you to understand where I'm coming from. And so this is coming from the Bible.
You all right, man?
Ashe? Let church say amen.
Amen. Hallelujah.
This is from the book of Genesis, chapter 1. And this goes to things we've talked about in 2012. So we're winding down 2012. You go all the way back to Elisha, the person of power that we talked about back in January and February, back in March. And this is where a lot of this is kind of summing up what we were saying. In the beginning, God created the heaven and earth, and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, let there be light, and there was light. Okay, this is what we're saying, that the nothingness, that which we reference as Odu, dark matter consciousness. In order for it to have its full experience, we all know that it saw itself without form. So therefore, to have itself in its perfection and totality, it had to create its opposite, which is imperfection. Everybody with me? So you look at something perfect that saw its imperfection, meaning it saw the part of itself that it didn't know, which was form. I'm going to say that again. The earth was without form, void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters and said, let there be light, and that was light. So therefore, darkness has a sense of perfection. Darkness knows all of itself in itself, but even looking at it, it realized it was short one thing, and that was form. So therefore, it now has to create its opposite in order to have its full of experience. So anyway, basically, you're going to hear me read something, and basically what it's saying is that where there is no man, there is no deity. God cannot even know itself to create all of itself, and part of its perfection is has to know its imperfection. That's us. Everybody still with me?
Yeah, sure.
And God said, and God saw the light that it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness it called night, and the evening and the morning were the first day. He said, let there be firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. And God made the firmament, divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament, and it was so. And God called the firmament heaven, and the evening and the morning were the second day. And God said, let the waters under heaven be gathered together unto one place, and let the dry land appear, and it was so. So even when you get into the cosmology of the fire, you hear about OIDSI, light coming down, and with the land, and the hen, and the dirt, and the snail, because the snail is spiral, right? So the snail represents an act of creation. If you look at a snail, you see a spiral, spiritual. Spy, to breathe, to call, to exist. Al, God. When we talked about the Al, El, it's Canaanite. Spiral, how God exists. So if you look at a snail, this is why OIDSI represents light. It's going to have to make sense to you now, because when we do geography, you're not going to get it. So everybody that ain't watched the classes, you need to watch the classes. We're going to make sure all of them loaded up. So when the word on the street is Bible Femi don't make no punk ass priests and priestesses, this is where it starts. So if you to be a good practitioner of fire, you must become a student of nature. You just want to do the lectures and do the dance and all that, that's fine. We call that Hollywood. Alright? Alright, let's keep rolling. Y'all never thought Christianity was up in Ifa. Christianity is Ifa.
Ashe.
Ashe?
Ashe.
And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters called he seas. And God saw that it was good. Let the earth bring forth grass, the herb yielding seed, and the fruit yielding fruit after its kind, whose seed is in itself upon the earth, and it was so. And God saw that it was good. And the evening and the morning were the third day. And God said, let there be light in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let there be for signs and for seasons, for days and for years. I'm going to say that again. Let there be light in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years. So this is how calendars, this is how the seasons move. This is why every 3 days or every 30 days, which is considered a cycle. So 3 times 30 is 90, and when you get every 90 days, you get an equinoctial point shift. The 21st affirmation of Ma'at says, I have not violated sacred times and seasons. 21 is the number of change. Why would they make that the 21st affirmation of Ma'at? You would have to give it to priest of Amun-Ra. Because they studied the earth for 25,920 years, the great year. If you break that all the way down, in which we've done that before, if you go back and look at the classes, all the way down to your breath. Everybody with me?
Sure.
See, when final exam comes, if you don't remember this, we broke down the concept of being stuck and being stupid. Stupid. Or you can be a student and study, or you can be stuck and stupid. All right, all that means something. For days and for years. And let them be for lights in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth, and it was so. And God made the 2 great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night. What? That sounds like yin yang. Let's keep moving. And God set them in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, and divide the light from the darkness. God saw that it was good. And the evening and the morning were the fourth day. And God said, let the waters bring forth abundantly the moving creature that hath life, and the fowl that may fly above the earth upon firmament of heaven. And he created great whales and every living creature that moveth, which the waters brought forth abundantly after kind, and every winged fowl after his kind. And God saw that it was good. And he blessed them, saying, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters and the seas, and let fowl multiply in the earth. And the evening and the morning were the fifth day. And God said, let the earth bring forth the living creature after his kind, cattle and creeping things and beasts of the earth after his kind. And it was so. And God made the beasts of the earth after his kind, and cattle after their kind, upon everything that creeped upon the earth after this. And God saw that it was good. Now he says, on the sixth day, six taken from the Greek sex, to create. Sixth day. God said, let us. Who are these people? Wait a minute. Who is God rolling with? Who is his posse? What's his crew? What's his elay? Who up in his egg bay? Who is his heavenly mates? God said, let us make man in our image, our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish, Ejaro, and over the fowl, Adiye, Ileye, and over the cattle, and all over the earth, and every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. And God created man in his own image. In the image of God created him, male and female. And he blessed them. He said unto them, be fruitful and multiply. Go have sex and replenish the earth and subdue it. Put it under your feet. Have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the fowl of the earth, air, and every living thing upon the earth. And he said, I've given you every herb bearing seed, and every tree in which is the fruit of a tree yielding. To you it shall be for meat, and every beast of the earth, and to every fowl of the air, and everything that creep on the earth where there is life, I have given every green herb for meat. And it was so. And God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was good on the evening and the morning. This was the sixth day. And on the seventh day, he ended his work. He rested. On the seventh, he set, or sat, or his own son set. Or the great light was present with us, called Satan, or Satan, or Set. Your opposite. What does all that mean? All this creation. Let's go back to the us. The us are those ministers. The us are the priests of God, the creator, the source, Amen, Oludumare, pick the name of it. No deity works without what you reference as the forces of nature or the construct. God created a construct before we even got here as teachers. In other words, the earth ain't never produced nothing it can't feed. So that shouldn't even be a reason why people are starving. A mother has never produced anything she can't feed. So there's no such thing as similarity. It's called breast milk. Everything has its divine order, the us, that it talks about. The Jews call it the Elohim. The Comecans call it the Netters. Christians call it angels. We in Ifa call it Orishas. Divine forces. And when you say, oh yeah, the spirit of thunder and lightning, it don't stop there. Oh, the spirit of iron, it don't stop there. You can't just say the spirit of iron and not know Ogun represents the agrarian age, the industrial age, the technological age. So it's more to somebody just saying spirit of iron, owner of a machete. Machete is a tool. What do you use it for? Clear a path. All those things I just told you help clear a path as we go forward in life. In other words, E-ray is not optional. You're going in E-ray anyway. If you choose to be in EB, that means you're not getting the lesson. You're going forward, just got a bungee cord around your waist. So, I'm going to read something again, a little tedious, I apologize, but in order for you to get it, this is called the Ministers of Oludumare, and I have to get into something to clear the air, because in order for us to understand and know this thing we call God, the one that expresses itself in the many, we have to study the many that make up the one. Because as we talked before, we can't know God as itself. If everything moves and never rests and it constantly understand and know this thing we call God, the one that expresses itself in the many, we have to study the many that make up the one. Because as we talked before, we can't know God as itself. If everything moves and never rests and in constant motion, for you to say I know God, meaning you just put it to a stop to know all of what it is at that moment. But if it never rests and is in constant motion, then you never got it in the first place, because it is consistently moving. So everything we knew about God up until, and we'll just use the Gregorian calendar, up until 2012 years, 10 months, 21 days, 13 hours, and 55 seconds, it just changed. Because now we're at 56, 57, 58, 59, we're just going into more time. If God does not rest, if it's constant motion, if you say, I know all of what it is, that is a lie. Or better yet, we'll make it sound better, that is a theory. And that's why you become a theologian and you go to theology school. Ashe? So therefore, to know what you reference as God's at itself, you have to study the aspects of God. And the aspects of God are the divine forces of nature, or the natural order of things that pushes its way forward. And so we have to study it to know God. In the middle of studying it to know God, we have to find ourselves. So therefore, when the ancients wrote, know thyself, or the knowledge of God lies within the knowledge of oneself. That the first system of salvation is the knowledge of self. You can't know God till you know yourself. You can't know yourself till you really understand the grid, the geography, the topography that you live in. So you must study the nature that is around you. And so every civilization created its cosmology based upon aspects of the thing we reference as a God. So the ministers and the priests are first of God, are those natural forces. And so if I am an entity of government and I got to get you away from understanding this so I can control you, so I can jack you into a matrix, I have to go into the back of your mind, the medulla oblongata, and I have to steal something that is sitting between the ingala and the pingala, those two nerves that sit next to your, on the east side, as Baba Dare explains it. I got to go in there and steal something to take it away from you so you don't know yourself. Which is one of my favorite lines in The Matrix, when Neo asked Morpheus, why me? And Morpheus said, because you asked the question, what is the Matrix? The same question you asked, why am I at this job? Why am I living in this place at this time? Why am I married to this person? Why am I living with this person? What am I here to do? What is my purpose? So therefore, we get into something, in order to study ourselves or to know ourselves, we must have to study our environment. And it is important to understand the importance of studying what's around you, because to do that, it makes you an occultist. Now that don't mean y'all run out the room now, because I use the word cult. Taken from the word cultivate, culture, to take something, make it, change it, shift it, grow it, prune it, prod it. Cult, or occult, which means to see something unseen to others. So if I study the occult in order to shape, change, make, grow, and prod myself and make me something bigger or better, to cultivate, I must study things that are unseen. So now I am an occultist. It makes sense. So therefore, in being an occultist, one must no longer now operate under the thing of monotheism. You must have to come to something called polytheism. So I'm going to read something from Oludumare, God in Your Belief, by E. Bolaji Idowu. In the reference to chapter 7, The Ministers of Oludumare, John Oman summarized the well-known opinion of Andrew Lang on the topic. To Lang, the sorry situation had been caused mainly by the advance of culture, the moral preeminence of a God who cannot be bribed proved too much a handicap in competition with the ravenous but serviceable ghosts or ghost gods and shades of ancestors. Add to that the rise of autocratic institutions, and you have arrived at the reason why the old supreme being was obscured or superannuated or at best enthroned as Emperor God. In dealing with this question, John Owen himself said, polytheism is far from being the simplest of all stages of religion to understand. Why did man thus break up what he must always have known to be in some sense one experience? And this is the greater difficulty that, however we explain it, at least polytheism proper has always gone with great progress in material civilization and with very remarkable advancement in mental culture. This, he says, is not necessarily a matter of race, but of traditional culture. Among his illustrations, he quotes not only Africans or Sumerian worshippers, but also Roman Catholics, who preferred to address their devotion to a variety of saints and to erect in their churches a multiplicity of altars rather than to adopt to the centralized simplicity of Protestant Reformation. He sees pluralism partly as the product of the rich diversity of life, coming especially with the development of communities. William James approaches this matter in a practical way when he was grappling with the problem of the existence of evil in the world. He observed that practical polytheism has ever been more or less frankly pluralistic and shown itself well satisfied with a universe composed of many original principles, provided we be allowed to believe that the divine principle remains supreme and that others are subordinate. Almost simultaneously in 1946, to be precise, Atkinson Lee found aesthetic impulse in the forefront of the impelling motive to polytheism, adding to the secondary motive of a certain fascination to most minds about mere number of things. The Yoruba designate the divinity by the generic names of Orisha. This is the name etymology of which is rather obscure. What this is saying is that the best way to understand nature, the best way to understand the works of that which you reference as a God, is that it must represent something of pluralistic value, many things. We study the many to know the one. So we go back to the book of Genesis when it said, let us make man. So if it says, let us, if us made man, then therefore we have to study the manifestations of the us. Everybody with me?
Sure.
So if there's a spirit of iron, if there's a spirit of white light, if there's a spirit of the ocean, if there's a spirit of the river, if there's a spirit of the earth, if there's a spirit of an animal, and so on and so on, we must study these spirits because they're part of the us. That was part of our divine makeup, because we have established we can't know the one in its entirety, right? Because it constantly moves. So we are reduced to studying its attributes. Everybody with me?
Sure.
So to study its attributes is where we will find our salvation and the knowledge of oneself in its environment. So this is what the Yoruba people did. This is what the most indigenous cultures did. They had to study their environment and get to know their environment or become one with their environment. And therefore they reached back and gave power, they gave reverence, they gave access to intimacy of themselves with this deity they reference as a god. But the one thing they knew for sure, they never made a statue to that god. They only made idols and statues to the aspects of that god. So therefore we became idol worshippers. I don't have a problem with that.
Wow.
Let church say amen.
Amen.
Because I'm not really worshiping the idol. I have to get to know the idol to get to know myself. If I never get the idol and I just study the one, then I'll make a very good Christian. I will just give my life to the one. And I'll go back and do like the lady said, I ain't nothing. Well, I am something. I breathe, I eat, I sleep, I move. I have a law of opposites that's going on. I'm spiraling forward. I have to be something if it says I was created in its image and likeness. So now I'm saying I'm nothing? No, it is the nothingness. Within it lies something which was me. Even if it's perfect and I'm its opposite, I'm imperfect, I am still something. Because it can only identify itself when I come down here to do something. Everybody with me?
Sure.
Okay, so therefore I need to study and know those forces, or that Elohim, or those Netas, or those angels, or those Orishas. If not, I just stay jacked up, jacked in. I stay at the crossroads. And Eshu becomes my friend rather than what it's here to do, and that is open doors for me. Ashe?
Ashe.
Orisha. I'm going to explain Orisha to you through a story that comes out of the Yoruba pantheon cosmology. So listen, put your thinking caps on. As the myth has it, the name Orisha was first used in designating the arch divinity of Yoruba land. The arch divinity in Rumala had descended into the world to fulfill the functions allotted to them by Oludumare. And the affairs of the world had been running smoothly for some time when, for some reason, the arch divinity decided he wanted a slave. He therefore went to the slave market at Emure and brought himself one. The name of that slave was Atowoda, which means that which one brings upon one's own head. Atowoda proved very serviceable at the beginning, and so gave his master much satisfaction. On the third day after he was bought, he asked if his master would kindly let him have a piece of land for cultivation. To this request, the arch divinity readily gave his consent and allocated to him a piece of land on the side of a hill situated not far from his house. In 2 days, Atowoda had cleared the land, made a farm, and built a hut. This impressed his master the more, so much that he reposed every confidence in his apparently good slave. But Atowoda was not good at heart, for he somehow developed a desire to murder his master. He was only biding his time, thinking of the best ways and means of carrying out his purpose. He soon found a way. There were large stones embedded in the soil of his farm, and discovered that by loosening the soil under one of those stones, he could easily set it rolling downhill to crush his unwary master anytime the latter was climbing up the hill to pay one of his wanted visits to the farm. Therefore, he carefully selected his stone and set to work immediately. Soon he was able to get it ready. There it lay, precariously waiting for the little push that would send it careering downhill on its errand of murder. 1 or 2 mornings later, the arch divinity started on his way to visit the farm. From the top of the hill, Atowada watched him. His habitual white clothing marked him out clearly. When Atowada was sure that there could be no escape for him, he suddenly gave the stone a push. The stone made straight for the arch divinity. The arch divinity, paralyzed with astonishment and terror, could not escape. He was crushed to bits and scattered. The report of the disaster soon reached Oludumare, who went to the scene immediately. After a short time spent in lamenting the fate of his poor leader, he performed a certain rites which made it possible for him to find all the scattered pieces. These he collected in a calabash and carried to Iranje, the city of the arch divinity. There he deposited of the portion of the pieces and then distributed the rest all over the world as Ahum Tia Risha, what was found and gathered of the arch divinity. Hence the name Orisha, which is a contraction of Ahum Tia Risha. Thus began the cult of the arch divinity all over the world. When the other divinity derived his name from the arch divinity, then it became necessary to qualify the name applied to him, so he got the modified name of Orisha in La, the arch or great divinity. It is said that it was the arch divinity who gave the name Orisha to his children, the divinities. We'll stop right there. The Spirit of God was moved across the waters. It was void and was dark. He said, let there be what?
Light.
Ashe? Everybody with me? When white light hits a prism, it scatters into pieces. And it goes all over the world. When God wanted to create the land in Europe, the earth, he gave it to Obatala, who came down on a golden chain, fashioned by Ogun. Why? Because the DNA helix has to live in the blood. Ogun is iron. He had to make it. The DNA helix is the golden chain. Looks like an A. Obatala's number is what? He represents white what?
Light.
God say, let that be what?
Light.
Let who make what? Let us
Make man.
Ashe? The significance of this myth lies in it suggests that Orisha was originally a unity, that this is the universal way of giving recognition to the process of fragmentation, which comes as a result of giving concrete shapes in the mind to certain outstanding attributes of the deity, or of that renaming due to circumstances by which one and the same divinity becomes apparently several divinities, i.e. Obatala becomes father of the Orisha. First Odu is what? It is called the supporter, the father of what? All Odus. Everybody with me?
Yes.
Anybody get lost?
Nope.
If you get lost, let me know. We call Ochosu. We can find your way back home. Therefore, we have to look elsewhere for another derivation. We're very inclined to the view that the name Orisha is a corruption of an original name, Orishe. Orishe, head source. Ori is head. It is a name for man's physical head. It means also, however, and I think primarily, this is the author talking, in essence of personality, the ego. She in Europe is a verb meaning to originate, to begin, to derive, or spring from. Instead of saying she, sometimes we say what? Ashe. The name Orishe then would be an ellipsis of EBT, Oritishe, the origin of source of Ori. Now, what is the origin or head source? Question. It is the deity itself, the great Ori, from whom all Ori derive, inasmuch he is the source and giver of each of them. This is the author talking. I am strengthened in this view of the derivation of the name by the analogy of Igbo-chi. In a general sense, chi is the essence of personality or the personality soul. The generic name for the divinities is also chi. All chi, man's or the chi, which is divinity, derived from chi uku, the great chi, which is the deity, so that either the Yoruba Ori or the Igbo chi means, in the general sense, that essence which derives from the head source, the great source of all life and being, the source from which all take their origin. So when we say spirituality, spa means to breathe, call, or exist. That is your chi, that is your prana, that is your breath. That's how you must exist, in accord with the head. So this is why Baba Shango Dare tells you meditation is important. This is why sometimes we tell you those implements you call orishas, no, they're in here. So therefore, those forces of nature, when they said, let us make man in our image, if they are spirits without form, you have to carry Ogun, or Chosi, or Batala, or Shun, Yemoja, or Ya, Nana Baruku, or Chosi, Sampana, and so on and so on, are all in you. Everybody with me? Okay. We're coming to a little close. Altogether, the Orisha form the Yoruba pantheon. Oludumare is not one of, instead of the means to an end, which technically they are according to the Yoruba theology. That is a fact of experience which may not be answered by psychological arguments, so forth, so on. Lions, tigers, and bears, oh my. The bottom line is that the realness, they are real because it is part of your reality of getting to know yourself. So when I said, people saying, well, Shango exists and then he ascended to the sky, that is a concept that lives within you. I'm not going to get into an argument about what century it lived in and that, this, that, and the other. The fact of it is that the one thing that you understand, if you are created in the image and likeness of something that is unseen, or you can't see, the best you're going to get close to see and to know it is study the construct that was here before you. So going back to the very first classes, talking about Ori, talking about Odu, and how Ori coming down from heaven to earth, going to these houses of these Orishas, this is in your manual. Of how it went to the house of these Orishas to come and help, and how one said, I will help you up here in the mountains, but I cannot help you down by the sea. You went to the one of the sea, so I can help you in the sea, but I can't help you down here in the forest, so you go to one to the forest, blah, 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 and so on and so forth. So these Orishas, these head source, these scattered, fragmented parts of the light, because the light is the aspect that hits the prism or it hits the earth and it bursts into different aspects of the one. So if the one has to use light as in the beginning for us to have an experience, and it separates it from day and from night, it simply talks about laws of opposites and waters and birds and everything that's here. So when you get into the Yoruba cosmology of why they do rituals, the ability to change and redirect energy, operating in the principles of being God-like. This is why they would take everything in the construct, the plants, the minerals, the animals, the blood, to reconstruct things and put it in its proper place. If you have co-created something that you have now judged in its right place, or the place you would like for it to be. So when someone says, oh, y'all worshiping those idols, we're paying reverence to aspects of yourself, just as they're paying reverence to aspects of the one they call God. Are you trying to change things? You trying to make the world fit? No, I'm trying to fulfill my purpose by redirecting energy. I can do that. Book of John said it, ye men are like gods.
Amen.
So you need to be about the business of doing that. So the indigenous cultures of this planet knew one thing. To know oneself, one must now develop an intimacy with nature, or the natural order of things. And what the Matrix was telling you about was how the machines which you created has now become your deity. The machine that you created has become your deity. The institution of banking, the institution of real estate, the institution of education, the institute of religion, the institute of marriage, the institute of this, the institute of that, it has become your deity. When it's only supposed to be a pillar or a totem or a part of how you go forward, you now bow down to the job. You now bow down to the educational system, which has yet to teach you universal knowledge. They call itself a university. You now bow down to those institutions that you have to do the ritual to get your behind out of. Ye men are like gods? Really? Ye men are like something else. Something went wrong in the creation.
Something went wrong in the mix, man.
Something got lost. Something got thrown off. Anybody got an EFA Oracle book?
Yeah.
I'm not going to read it in Yoruba, I'll read it in English. Oludumare, witness of faith, second to Oludumare. Thou art foremost, I cannot say this word, efficacious than medicine. Now we got the educated folks, we got the Ebonics.
Efficacious.
What is it, I will? Efficacious. Efficacious. Thou foremost efficacious than medicine.
Yes.
Thou the immense orbit that averts the day of death. My Lord, Almighty to save. Mysterious spirit that fought death. To thee, salutation is first due in the morning. Thou equilibrium that adjusts world forces. Thou art the one whose exertion it is to reconstruct the creature of bad luck, repairer of ill luck. He who knows thee becomes immortal. Lord, the undisposable King, perfect in the house of wisdom. My Lord, infinite in knowledge. For not knowing thee in full, we are futile. Oh, if we could but know thee in full, all would be well with us. Let church say amen.
Wow.
You just prayed to invoke the spirit of your own destiny. That's how you become a wife of Oludumare. You marry your destiny. And if something is off in your marriage.
All the way.
Ashe?
Ashe.
Who you mad at?
You mad?
Why gossip? The manifestation of the lack of inner strength and courage to reconcile the difference. Gossip is now born. Now you need to find an ally. As we would say, now I got to go call somebody who can share my experience and can find that little minuscule small door to go in against that brother, that sister, to go along with my lack of strength and courage to do the work at hand, or to know my experience at hand, or accept responsibility and be accountable for the shit I just created. How can you come into existence with a destiny and then being mad at the construct? And the part of you that created the construct, all you got to do is go within yourself and recreate it. Starting first by accepting responsibility for what you did. Everybody with me?
Sure.
So, from this journey, we're coming to the end of 2012. And we're going to do the best we can in our technologically Ogun power to get the rest of those classes up. So we can piece them all together. Because everybody wants to know, how does the Iwo or the Iyawo knows how to interpret Odu? You first have to know what Odu is. You have to know how energy ebbs and flows. If you saw Otura in a health position, you know that's darkness in the throat. If you saw Ikai in a health position, you now know that something on the outside of you has caused those negative vibes, those negative vibrations, that poison, that gossip that destroys the soul is affecting you, and you're trying to speak truth in the midst of darkness. That's Ikai. We call it codified nigga shit. Everybody say Ashe?
Ashe.
So that's what it is. So that's sacred geometry, coming into existence by something, a poetic dance with nature, the universe that you have, and with yourself. It is yourself, your higher self, your Eponri trying to get with your Ori. Your Ori knew to tell you, with that Odu, you did this. And it says you got enemies. Enemies are your best teachers. So when you go get a reading, they say, yeah, they say I got enemies. If you didn't have enemies, you didn't need a reading. Enemies are needed to get to know yourself. To get to know yourself. You sitting there trying to throw roots, magic, brouhahas, all kind of stuff on your enemy. Do the work on yourself. The enemy, with the help of Eshu, will find another door. Ogun will clear his path to go find prosperity down the street. So when you are in heaven, you're trying to come to earth, and you got this Odu, you got this contract. And the Awo, the Iyawo are trying to tell you how to operate within the structure of your Odu. Then operate within the structure of your Odu. When something goes in disarray, you have to bring it back to an alignment. You now have to practice the ways of the God that you are. That's called ritual. There's the only way to be spiritual. It's by ritual. The chi. So now, in order for you to understand all of the contract that you signed called Odu, before I can even start teaching you Odu, as we said before, we got to teach you who you be. Who are you? What are you? Why you even need an Odu? Why you here? Why you come here? Why you mad at God? Yo, what you want? So the power of Orisha has to be understood when they show up in signs and symbols and dreams. So our next class, I don't know when that's going to be, but our next class,
December,
we're going to talk about what they talk about in the book, the personality or the soul personality. We're going to talk about the function of every Orisha in its personality trait, and how when you, a practitioner of E5, when you walk into the club, when you walk into the sports bar, when you're in the mall, at the donut shop, when you're at the family reunion, you will know who is speaking to you. When Uncle Chuck, Aunt Ruby, Muddeal, the customer service girl behind at Walmart with the gold hair and the pink fingernails popping that gun. I ain't mad at it. Just wants you to get understand why she talking like that and looking like you before you pop off. When someone tells you, I think I want to go down to the store in a few minutes, could you take me? And you ask them in 10 minutes, are you ready to go to the store? Who? You know you're dealing with that shoe. Why you gonna get mad? Well, you say you need to go to the store in 10 minutes, 10 minutes up. Well, I don't think I need to go to the store today. Okay. But it'd probably be best for me if I did.
translation.
You have to sit there and wait for SU to work it out, figure out what they're gonna do. If not, you're gonna go in retrograde with it. And you're gonna pop. No offense to the SU children in the house there. So our next class we will be discussing the science of the personality traits of an Orisha and Orisha combinations. What is the difference between Ogun Oya and Ogun Yemoja? What is Obatala Oya opposed to Obatala Oshun? Why is Oshun Ogun emotional, but Shango Oshun, whoa. that we'll call a hot mess. So it's important to know that. So the next class will be based upon that, and that will conclude your birth coming into existence. Because if you now understand everything we've been talking about here this year, now we're trying to understand the science of the ministers, the priests, Oludumare, how they live within you. Now, how do you use them? How they work as your chief assistant to your OIDSI, because you are OIDSI. And how does this work as a chief? Well, how does OIDSI work as my chief assistant, along with my OIDSI on my purpose, on my path? I need to know that. So now that I'm here, and I've just been born, I initiated, and now that on the third day, on my Esentaye, on my Itai, I now get to know myself. So now we've taken everything in spirit, in heaven, and now we're descending, we've come to earth now, and now we can start understanding how the ebb and flow in the construct. Everybody with me? So I know we said we was going to start dealing with Ejiobe last February. But we may be this February in 2013. We say Ashe, Fa.
Ashe.
Ashe?
Ashe.
Ashe?
Ashe.
Ashe?
Ashe.
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 It is done. So hopefully we record.